Hi, and welcome to the Design Find podcast, a space where women are interviewed and in conversation to discuss the highs, lows, and everything in between about being a woman in design. The Design Find has new episodes every Monday, so make sure you come back every week. You can find more on the Design Find podcast Instagram. Hope you enjoy this episode. Hi, and welcome to the Design Find the podcast. Today we have Doone, and she's going to be sharing with us her story in the design field. So welcome, Doone.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Great. So to begin, can you please tell the listeners, if they don't know who you are, a little bit about yourself?
I can indeed. My name is Doone, and I'm the founder of a company called Female Startup Club, which it's changed over the last few years what I like to call it. But at the moment, I'm calling it a modern media company that's really set up to help women who are building e-commerce brands and making impactful brands into the world. So we do that through an inspirational podcast where I interview hundreds of very successful female founders to understand their blueprint in building an e-commerce brand or a direct-to-consumer brand, understanding the money piece and the marketing piece and the mistakes that they make. And then we also do that through practical content like our digital resources, our private network for entrepreneurs who are early stage building e-commerce brands, and my book, which just came out. I have it here, which I don't know if we're recording the video side of things, but if we are, this is what it looks like. Your Hype Girl.
Your Hype Girl. You can get it on Amazon if I'm correct, right?
Yes, on Amazon.
Great. So it's obvious you have your toes in a lot of different pools. So can you talk about how, I know this wasn't initially your job in your career, how you kind of went from studying design and what drew you to that, and then how it kind of flowed into Female Startup Club?
Of course. So let's see, rewinding. I went to university for a whole of 1 or 2 months. I remember getting into uni. I think it was for an arts degree or something like that. And I quickly realized university was not for me and I dropped out. And around that same time, I was like, okay, well, what am I going to do? I don't really know what I want to do big picture with my life. But at that time, I really wanted to work for a fashion magazine. And I was obsessed with this idea of working for glossies and kind of going down that pathway. And I thought what could be a good idea is to learn visual communication skills. So design, copywriting, photography, those kind of skills. And where I'm from in Brisbane, Queensland, Australia, there was a college there. It doesn't exist anymore, but it was called Design College Australia, DCA. And there you could do kind of a private 2-year course that gave you, an advanced diploma or something like that. And it was so great. I mean, we studied all those kinds of things. The main focus was graphic design. But during that process, I really realized graphic design isn't the profession that I want to pursue. But these skills are very, very valuable to me, and I can see that I'll use them ongoing. So knew I didn't want to be a designer, went through that whole process and really started to kind of get familiar with copywriting and telling a story and content marketing, although I didn't know what the term content marketing was at the time. After that, fast forward a little bit, I was looking for design-focused jobs. And so a few things that I was doing was I was still obsessed with this idea of working for a magazine and working in fashion. And so I remember there was this magazine in Brisbane, and it was part of the free newspaper, like a magazine that went inside the newspaper. And it was called something about style or something like that. Anyway, so they had an office in Brisbane. It's the only magazine that was there at the time. And I was like, hey, well, I need to get an internship there. If I'm going to work in a magazine, I need to use my skills that I've learned from college and get in the door. They don't have anything advertised. So I decide to go to my local nursery and I buy a thyme herb, a thyme plant. Mm-hmm. And I take it home. I pot it up in this pretty little, pot plant and put my business card in there saying, could I have a moment of your time with my website, www.doonerosin.com. And basically, I also, for some reason, just wanted to see inside the offices. So I dressed up in what I thought a delivery driver would wear, some oversized high vis kind of shirt and some little Nikes, and marched on in and was like, hello, like I have a delivery for the director. Anyway, she wasn't in at the time. So I took a peek around, had a bit of a look at the offices, and ultimately got a call back. And she was like, hey, we don't have any positions, but we'd love to create something for you. Let's create a 12-week course, a 12-week internship. And I was like, great, amazing. Got a lot of kind of insights into that world there. And
what did you do with
that
this
kind of
internship?
Oh, gosh. I mean, we're talking like 15 years ago, maybe 12 years ago. It was like layout, copywriting, those kind of things, checking things basically, and nothing that was sort of, it was an internship. So I was working under all the other people who worked there, and very basic, but I got a good understanding of how things worked and what other people did, like what roles there were. And, this kind of was one of many internships that I did. And I really realized throughout that process that when you're creative and you pull things together to get the attention of people, you can really get what you want. And so that wasn't like visual communications, but it was another form of communicating to get that internship and get what I wanted out of it. Fast forward a little bit longer, I was interning for a fashion brand, and they told me that this new business was opening in Sydney, and I lived in Brisbane at the time still. And they were like, oh, this new fashion company is launching into Sydney. It's going to really change the market in Australia. We've heard really great things. And at this time, it was 2011, I think. And basically, Australia didn't have online shopping at that point. The market didn't know about online shopping really. So ASOS did exist, and we did know about ASOS, but no one was really kind of like actively buying online. And so this company called The Iconic was launching into the market, and their goal was to educate Australia on how to shop online and be really innovative in, that consumer experience. So I was like, great, this is my chance to work in fashion. I'm going to move and work in fashion at this amazing company that sells clothes online. So I pack up my bags, I moved to Sydney. And during this time, I've got an admin job on the side. I'm just trying to think back because it's such a long time ago. I've got an admin job on the side that I like transferred from Brisbane that was paying my bills. And I managed to get an internship there. And I was really hustling to make sure that before work, on my lunch breaks, after work, I was always like on email, putting my hand up for things, doing whatever I could to get noticed and be kind of on the radar of the people above us, like the bigger bosses. And after about 3 weeks, I remember my managing director coming to me and saying, hey, we need someone to run social media. We need someone to be like the Facebook professional person. Can you read everything on the internet and be that person? If you can, I'll give you a full-time job. And I was like, oh my God, absolutely. I don't even barely know what Facebook is at this point. It's so new.
Only Facebook, no TikTok, no Instagram, nothing. Completely
nothing.
Different. When we think of social media, we never think of Facebook now.
I know. And it was such a crazy time. And so I was immediately like, yes, oh my gosh. And it's at this time, I start working in social media, again, another form of communications. This is where I really start to realize that I love creating content. I love building community. I'm able to use, those skills of copywriting. I'm able to pull together different things to create, blog posts. Blogs were really big at the time. Facebook stuff, all that kind of thing. But at this time, it was a really pivotal point in my career because what I realized is the joy of working at a startup. And this is where I first got my taste of like what it meant to be an entrepreneur, because I didn't really know about that stuff beforehand. But I was really looking at the people around me thinking, oh, I'm not sure if I want to be like my boss. I'm not sure if I want that job or like this colleague beside me. I was looking at the guys at the top being like, one day I want to do my own thing. And that's where it really started, this kind of like desire for one day, I don't know when, I don't know how, but I want to figure out my own path. And so fast forward a few years ago, many years later, I was building a direct to consumer jewelry brand, and I was kind of struggling with the blueprint. I didn't know what to do next. On paper, everything was going really well. I was traveling all around the world. I'd moved to Bali for 6 months to produce there. I'd gone to China. I'd gone to
What
Thailand.
made you
I was
like
featured in.
randomly become drawn to jewelry and you said, hey, I think there's a gap in the market and I want to make a jewelry brand?
I definitely didn't think gap in the market. That's not where my head was at. My head was at, I love sparkly things. This seems really fun. I want to do something that's pretty. I want to do something that's product based. At the time, I'd been working with my now husband on his tech startup. And I remember being on a panel at Tech Week alongside people from like Airtasker talking about the tax benefits of moving a company from Australia to the UK. And I was like, I'm so out of my depth here in terms of what I'm enjoying. I don't want this to be what I'm doing day to day. And that kind of led me on the path to starting my jewelry brand, Kinks. And so, yeah, basically, I didn't think about gap in the market. I didn't really know about all that kind of stuff at that point. I was just going with what I liked and what I was drawn to and wanted to have a bit of fun. And so, like I was saying, I was moving places. We went to Paris Fashion Week. We did a bunch of cool things. We were in Vogue. We were on influencers. But I kind of didn't have the blueprint of like, how do I make more money? And like, I didn't have the money piece figured out. And it was all a bit complicated and all over the shop.
And you never went to business school or anything like that. This is just you learning on the fly.
Learning on the fly, totally just according to Google, according to friends. And around that same time, I remember reading a book by Tim Ferriss called Tools of Titans. Amazing book, huge book. And he basically interviews high performers, billionaires, all that kind of thing to understand what they're up to, why they're winning, all that kind of good stuff. And I remember thinking, I love this like direct, no bullshit approach to business. It's very masculine energy. It's less believe in yourself and more here are the practical tips, which is very my vibe. And I was like, oh, I want to hear from more women with this same energy. And I'd been having these conversations with a lot of my girlfriends who were founders to understand what they were doing in business, like how they were growing, who would they hire, what advice did they have for me, how much money they were spending, those kinds of things. And so I was like, oh, I could start just, recording these quick videos for social media. If I'm getting value from these conversations, other people will get value from these conversations. So we started posting them on Instagram, IGTV is just a disaster for discoverability. So they didn't perform very well and no one wants to watch a 20-minute video or a 10-minute video on Instagram. And so it quickly shifted to the podcast. And that's basically how Female Startup Club was born.
And was this before or after podcasts kind of became cool? Because I know they were always around, but recently in the past 3 or 4 years, that's when it was like, whoa, everyone has a podcast. So was it during that time?
So I started the podcast in 2019. I don't know if it was, I feel like podcasting has always been really big. Now it really feels like everyone has a podcast. I don't know if that was the case at the time. I can't remember.
And you just randomly had a microphone and you said, hey, let's record and we'll see what happens?
Basically, I didn't even have a microphone. I started with my phone. Then I upgraded from my phone to this, 150 little microphone kit that I bought from, I think it was Rhodes. And I used that up until late last year when I invested in this. Very, very humble beginnings. But yeah, I started literally just recording on my bedroom floor. No like big ambitions, no plans, just seeing how it would go. And, today we've interviewed over more than 300 founders. We're constantly ranking in the top charts all around the world. And it's grown into this amazing community of founders and women who are building businesses or wanting to build businesses. And yeah, it brings me so much joy.
Yeah, it's amazing to see. If anyone, I'm sure people have seen the Female Startup Club Instagram, as well as the TikTok, and you also have like a mailing list and all these great things where people can get involved. You can see how inspiring it is, and it's really amazing that you've been able to create that.
Thank you.
So you kind of talked about this before, but what kind of drew you to design, and how does that ever help you, or maybe switch your train of thought when you're doing things for Female Startup Club?
So I was drawn to design because I'm a very hands-on person. I've always been really crafty. I've always loved to do arty things. And the course that was on offer in particular was very much like, it was graphic design, yes, but it was really about doing things from scratch. So whether that was like painting or drawing a logo and then putting it onto the computer, and really that kind of like hands-on approach to design. And I really got so much joy out of it. I I never wanted to be a graphic designer, but I really could foresee that those are the kind of skills that would help me. And then throughout my career, I've always looked back being like, it was the best possible course that I could have taken, because I use, Photoshop daily. I use all sorts of those Adobe programs, and I've used them ever since. And it's just been a very just valuable toolkit to have, basically. For Female Startup Club, now our branding looks very different to when we started, but for my jewelry brand, for helping my husband's business, for the beginnings of Female Startup Club, I was able to whip things up very easily myself. I didn't need to invest in anything. And even to this day, if I need something, I can just open up, Photoshop and do it myself. Our current design wasn't done by me. I wanted to work with someone who really was a graphic designer and who has so many more skills than I have. I'm just very much around the basics, and I can make things work for myself, but I'm not the visionary designer that so many talented designers are. But yeah, basically I could just foresee that it would be a good skill set to have in my toolbox.
Yeah, and it really seems that it worked out for you. And I'm not sure if you are involved with any of the designs now, or you might hire someone else to do that. But you can see that the design and kind of the aesthetic and vibe of Female Startup Club kind of draws you in, because it gives an overall like picture of what it's going to be like, and it gives some like females a safe space, as well as kind of happiness with the colors and everything. Kind of, it really shows how a design of a page, if it was just blank white and black, how your audience and how many people would be engaged would really be different.
Yeah, thank you so much for saying that. For me, when I look at certain brands and when I look at things online or out in the world, design is such a big part of our day-to-day life. It's a big part of everything that we experience it, whether you really realize it or not. And so good design, it creates emotion. It makes you feel connected to something. It makes you feel stuff. And so for me, it was very important to have a brand that I looked at every day and just felt super excited about, that brought me so much joy. Even if other people didn't like it, I was really creating this for myself. I was creating, based on the colors that I love to look at, what lights me up. I'm wearing a pink sweater right now. My book is pink. I'm a very pink girl. I want bright, happy colors that make you feel something. And I'm so happy with what we were able to create for the Female Startup Club design.
And you've mentioned previously about how the Female Startup Club primarily has a focus on e-commerce, female entrepreneurs, for your actual Female Startup Club podcast. And what do you see from them that they incorporate with designs, from packaging to websites, that you think really benefits these companies?
I mean, today, the reality is that people shop with their eyes. If you see a brand on a shelf and it's identical, if the inside of it, the product is identical to the one next to it, you're always going to go to the one that has the better packaging, the one that speaks to you. So design, especially if you're building a consumer packaged goods brand, like a CPG brand in, say, the beauty category, for example, you really need to focus on having standout, in your face packaging that people look at and immediately think, oh, I would love to have that on my bathroom shelf. Even if the product isn't as good as another like brand next to it, people will go towards the one that looks great on the shelf. Definitely. So brands that succeed, they need to really focus on, or from what I see, through our interviews, their product at its core is amazing. You've got to have a good product or else you can't, win, basically. But in addition to that, when you have an amazing brand experience, from the design to the packaging, like you said, to what happens when you receive it in the mail, to the customer service, every touch point needs to be considered. And what I see when I interview founders is they've really thought about all those different channels. They've really considered the full customer experience, and design is just such a huge part of that.
Yeah, I completely agree with especially when you're shopping online and you can't even physically feel, that's one sense taken away from you, that you have more senses put together for your eyes, and what you need is good packaging, good branding that will really show off your product.
Absolutely.
So going into some more like just quick fire questions, what do you think your style is in terms of design?
Definitely not minimalistic, definitely not low key. I am over the top, sparkly, as many different elements as possible, as many different colors as possible. I've just spent the last 6 months working on the brand for my non-alc wine company, and we received back yesterday our presentation from the agency that we worked with, and we worked very closely together based on the vision that I had. And when I tell you it is over the top, it is so over the top and so amazing, but in an extremely different way to Female Startup Club. I wanted no pink. I wanted nothing that was feminine. I wanted it very much to be unisex design, but still very bold, very over the top. And the women that I worked with, they just did such a good job. And so for me, when I, think about what my style is, it's just like more is more. I'm like not minimal at all. I don't like simple design. I love complex, multiple things going on and busy.
Mm-hmm. And
as you could probably tell.
Love it. The headphones, the sweatshirt. What is
It's a whole vibe.
something that people don't usually know about you? Because they know you as Female Startup Club, all of that. What is something a little bit more in the surface?
Oh my gosh. Once I got hit by a car. That was pretty crazy. That's the only thing that comes to mind. I don't know what else. That's a tough question.
And what do you think your best words of wisdom or advice for someone looking to be part of the design field, or an entrepreneur, or kind of anything in between?
Something that I operate by literally day to day, and this is hard for designers or people in the design space, I feel, is done is better than perfect. I am someone that has just like made it my mission, because I'm so picky with certain things, to just be like, you know what? I'm not going to be picky and I'm not going to be fussy. Done is better than perfect, and do that at scale. Put things out at scale before it's ready, before it's perfect, so that I can iterate. I know that things will change. And I think that's a really important piece of advice for any new business owner or any new founder, because truly, and especially as women, we can be very crippled by perfection, and you will just spend so much time waiting and waiting, just saying to yourself, oh, well, I'm just going to do this, or I'm just going to, I'm going to wait 5 more, months until this happens. You can always fix something. So I just think, like, no matter what it is, professional or personal, just like get started. Done is better than perfect, and move in that direction.
Great words of wisdom. And what do you think some of the most underrated parts of your job is?
What's underrated? I mean, just creating content. I feel like a lot of people gloss over the fact that you should just like put out a lot of content and, don't realize like the time that goes into it. But even just like simple things like tweets, they're actually so much fun when you get into a rhythm of just putting your thoughts out into the world. It's totally underrated. I think it's so much fun. But it's one of those things, like, you can just get lost in thinking too high level versus like getting in the nitty gritty of it. And yeah.
And you're obviously very prominent on social media. What are some of your best tips for someone trying to boost their Instagram page?
I have so many. First of all, start creating content. If you haven't posted anything and you're asking someone for advice, wrong way to go about it. Start creating content to see what works and then ask for advice on what you can do to improve that content. Start trying. Second of all, if you post 50 times a video, like 50 videos on TikTok and it's not working, your content isn't hitting. You need to change your strategy. It's not going to work. So people will often think, oh, well, if I do it long enough, maybe something will happen, it will change. No, you need to totally change your style. Go and research what's working. Go and find creators in your same space and really analyze and research their winning posts to understand why. And then go back and use that as inspiration and figure out your own style and create in a different manner. I think it's so important to, test, iterate, try. The reality as well with social media is that you need to be consistent. It's not about posting 6 times in one day and then leaving it for a month. You need to audit yourself, think about how much content you can realistically create and then stick to that. So for example, for the podcast, I knew that I could create 3 episodes a week when I was started. I knew that I could do that for a year. So that's what I did. I never missed a day. I didn't do more than that. I just stuck to 3 episodes a week. For TikTok, I commit to posting 1 to 3 times a day. It takes me a lot of time. At the moment, I'm definitely like once a day, but I'm going to scale it back up to 3 times a day soon. Once you're able to build that into your workflow, stick to that, because social media, especially, it's and podcasting too, actually, it's very like part of a winning strategy is literally just consistency, showing up every single day, telling your story, communicating with your audience, engaging with the people who are following you and, chatting with you and giving you their energy. And yeah, basically stick to it. That's my advice.
Yeah, completely agree. And what are your goals for the next 2, 5, and 10 years, personally or for Female Startup Club?
One of my big goals for Female Startup Club and the future vision for Female Startup Club is to have a working capital. Actually, I'm going to say that again. Sorry. One of my big goals for Female Startup Club is very much to have a rolling fund where we have partnerships with a VC and we co-invest in D2C brands that are female founded, and being able to provide that working capital to women who are building impactful brands in the world. It's definitely a little way off, but that's the future vision for Female Startup Club and certainly what we're working towards, hopefully in the next 2 years. And kind of bringing that to life in a really exciting way.
That sounds amazing. That's a great idea.
Thanks.
And just to end off, where can the listeners find you? What's best to contact you? LinkedIn, Instagram, a website, any of that?
So I am always down to chat in the DMs, and you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, TikTok, all the places at Doone Rosin, which is DOONE ROISIN. And we also have a Female Startup Club Instagram account, which is Female Startup Club, all one word. You can also sign up to our newsletter mailing list at femalestartupclub.com. And we send an industry email once a week with kind of, a 5-minute breakdown of things that you should be in the know with, insights from the episodes, resources, all that kind of good stuff.
Thank you. And you can also buy your book. Your Hype
Girl.
Yes,
and you can also buy the book, Your Hype Girl, on Amazon.
Great little promo there. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, I hope you loved this episode. If you did, rate and review on Apple Podcast and Spotify, or send it to people who you would think would be interested in listening in. You can learn more about the guests in the show notes or on the Design Find Instagram. The Design Find podcast is under the Entrepreneurs Network.